Welcome to the best true crime channel, Real Stories in Dark Art. Today, here on the Illustrated Evil channel, we continue with part 2 of the video, The Truth About Michael Jackson That Still Divides the World. If you haven't watched part 1 yet, a link will appear somewhere on the screen. Click it, watch it, and then come back to this video. Now that we've reached the second part, it's time to look at what happened after the trials were over and why the controversy didn't end there. What ultimately happened is that the judge decided to dismiss the lawsuits. Both in James Safechuck's case and in Wade Robson's case, their attorney appealed in an attempt to bring the cases back to court. However, the decisions remained unchanged, and both lawsuits were dismissed again. Even with James Safechuck's testimony and the detailed account he presents in the documentary Leaving Neverland, many people began pointing out elements that remained unresolved. Others identified aspects of his story that appeared to contradict previous statements. Some of the first points raised involved the very beginning of James Safechuck's relationship with Michael Jackson and his family. In the documentary, James and his mother say that after the Pepsi commercial was filmed, Michael Jackson called them one day in Australia and spoke directly with the boy. According to that version, Michael Jackson later sent a crew to film James, which James now interprets as a kind of audition for future abuse. After that, they say they were invited to have dinner with the singer. James describes sitting on the floor, being interviewed, and performing a short dance. This narrative suggests that Michael Jackson initiated contact with the family. However, the testimony James later gave in court tells a different story. In his legal testimony, James stated that on March 10, 1987, he received a letter from Michael Jackson. In that letter, Michael thanked him for his letter, said he enjoyed working with him during the Pepsi commercial, and added that he would like to see him again. This indicates that the first contact after the commercial was initiated by James, not by Michael Jackson. This detail was never mentioned in the documentary. Similarly, the alleged filming of James by Michael Jackson's team was never referenced in any legal testimony. Another point of controversy involves James's claim that Michael Jackson pressured him to testify during the 2005 trial. In reality, James had already been removed from the witness list long before the trial began. In the documentary, James Safechuck also claims that Michael Jackson abused him in every area of Neverland Ranch, including swimming pools and themed outdoor locations, and that this happened almost daily. Critics pointed out that this contradicts his own descriptions of the extreme security and secrecy surrounding Michael Jackson's bedroom. They questioned why someone who feared being discovered in a private room would allegedly engage in abuse in open and visible areas of the property. These contradictions became part of the broader public debate surrounding the documentary Leaving Neverland. Another major point of controversy involved the specific locations where James Safechuck claimed the abuse had occurred. In the documentary, James states that he and Michael Jackson had sexual encounters inside a room located above the Neverland Ranch train station. However, there is a serious problem with that claim. James alleges that the abuse took place between 1988 and 1992. But construction of the Neverland train station did not begin until late 1993 and was only completed in 1994. In other words, the train station did not exist during the period James says the abuse was happening. The train station was built when James was already 16 years old. If the abuse had occurred at that time, it would contradict one of the documentary's central arguments. One of the key points presented in the film is that Michael Jackson allegedly lost interest in both James Safechuck and Wade Robson as they entered adolescence. However, in his legal testimony, James clearly stated that the abuse ended in 1992. He acknowledged that he continued having contact with Michael Jackson after that, and there are photographs that confirm this. But he consistently maintained that the sexual abuse occurred only until he was 14 years old. These inconsistencies raised further questions about the accuracy of the timeline presented in the documentary. Another element frequently referenced in public discussions about these cases involves statements made by members of Michael Jackson's own family. In particular, one figure who drew significant attention was his sister, LaToya Jackson. During the 1993 scandal, LaToya gave several interviews in which she publicly accused her own brother. At the time, she stated that despite loving Michael, she could not remain silent and claimed that he was guilty. These declarations were widely broadcast and quickly amplified by the media. Her statements became headline news and reinforced the public perception that even members of Michael Jackson's family believed the allegations to be true. However, those interviews would later be re-examined under a very different light. Years later, LaToya Jackson would explain that during that period, she was under the control of her husband and manager, Jack Gordon. According to her later accounts, he was abusive, manipulative, and forced her to make those public statements. LaToya claimed that the interviews were not voluntary and that she was pressured to speak against her brother. This revelation added yet another layer of complexity to the story. It raised questions about how much of the public narrative was shaped by coercion, fear, and media exploitation, rather than by verified facts. In 1993, during the height of the Jordan Chandler case, LaToya Jackson became a frequent presence in the media. She gave numerous interviews stating that although she loved her brother, she could not stand by if children were being harmed. In one of those interviews, she said that the children involved would carry that trauma for the rest of their lives and that she refused to be complicit. The situation became even more dramatic when LaToya's husband at the time, Jack Gordon, claimed that Michael Jackson had threatened to kill her and had even attempted to kidnap her on 2 occasions in order to keep her silent. Those statements were widely reported and contributed to the growing public outrage. However, in other interviews given later, LaToya also stated that she had never personally witnessed her brother behaving inappropriately with children. She mentioned seeing a check in the amount of $1 million made out to the father of one of the boys, who worked as a garbage collector. Based on that statement, members of the press, including journalist Diane DeMond, claimed that the check was intended to silence the family of James Safechuck, whose father owned a garbage collection business. But that story did not hold up for several reasons. First, the Safechuck family has always denied receiving money in exchange for silence. Instead, they acknowledged that Michael Jackson had lent them $305,000 to help them purchase a new home. Later, after the legal paperwork was completed, Michael Jackson forgave the debt and kept the house as part of the agreement. There is also a much more significant issue. LaToya stated that she had seen those checks as early as 1984. Since Michael Jackson and James Safechuck only met during the filming of the Pepsi commercial in 1987, it would have been impossible for that check to be related to his family. Years later, this entire situation involving LaToya became clearer. After separating from Jack Gordon, she released her autobiography. In it, she explained that in 1988, she distanced herself from her family in order to marry Jack Gordon. She later discovered that he was extremely violent. According to LaToya, Jack Gordon forced her to do things she did not want to do, including posing for a Playboy photo shoot. She also stated that Jack Gordon deeply hated Michael Jackson. When the Jordan Chandler case exploded in the media, he allegedly forced her to make public statements against her brother. According to LaToya, he threatened her by saying that if she refused, his mafia connections would kill Michael Jackson. She wrote all of this in her autobiography. She described being forced to appear on multiple television programs, speaking against her brother. In one of those appearances, LaToya even wore an earpiece, while Jack Gordon stood backstage, telling her exactly what to say to the interviewer. Returning to James Safechuck's story, his life did not change dramatically after making his allegations. He continued working as a programmer. This brings us to the documentary Leaving Neverland, which was produced by HBO in partnership with the British broadcaster Channel 4. The documentary, Leaving Neverland, was first shown in January of 2019 at the Sundance Film Festival. Even before its public release, the administrators of Michael Jackson's estate issued a statement calling the production an outrageous attempt to profit from the singer's name. After the documentary was screened, they described it as a public lynching. The director of the film, Dan Reed, responded by stating that the people responsible for managing Michael Jackson's legacy had failed to present any substantive criticism of the documentary. According to him, they had not disputed the facts or specific claims presented in the film. Dan Reed also complained that he was receiving aggressive messages and harassment from fans of Michael Jackson. The administrators of Michael Jackson's estate then filed a lawsuit against HBO. They argued that Wade Robson and James Safechuck had previously declared that Michael Jackson had never abused them, and that they later changed their stories for financial reasons. They also pointed out that the director of Leaving Neverland never contacted the estate to hear their side of the story before releasing the documentary. According to them, they were never given the opportunity to respond to the accusations presented in the film. HBO aired Leaving Neverland in March of 2019. The public reaction was enormous. As a result, the producers of The Simpsons removed an episode that featured Michael Jackson. Several radio stations stopped playing his music. At the same time, however, searches and streams of his songs increased significantly on platforms like Spotify and YouTube. In the middle of all this controversy, an important piece of information ended up going largely unnoticed. A British news outlet obtained a previously unreleased video showing Michael Jackson responding directly to his lawyers about the accusations of sexual abuse during the 1990s. Before showing that video, it is important to understand the context in which it was recorded. That video was recorded in a hotel room in 1996. At the time, 5 former employees of Michael Jackson had filed a lawsuit against him, claiming they had been wrongfully terminated. They also alleged that Michael Jackson threatened employees who claimed to have witnessed inappropriate behavior involving children. In the video, only Michael Jackson appears on camera. However, according to the report, lawyers representing both sides were present in the room. In the recording, Michael Jackson addresses the accusations directly and strongly denies them. He states that if people repeat lies long enough, others eventually begin to believe them. He says that false stories were being told about him and that those lies were being used to destroy his reputation. He also speaks about his identity, saying that he is a Black American and that he is proud of who he is. As far as is known, this is the only video in which Michael Jackson was directly questioned about allegations of sexual abuse and pedophilia in a private legal setting. Another important detail that many media outlets failed to properly report is that the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI, also investigated Michael Jackson. For years, there were rumors that the FBI had evidence showing Michael Jackson had paid off the parents of more than 20 boys in exchange for silence. This story originated from a British tabloid in 2013 in an article filled with vague claims and internal contradictions. Nevertheless, many news organizations repeated the allegations without properly verifying the information. The truth is that the FBI did assist in the investigations related to the Jordan Chandler case and the Gavin Arvizo case. A portion of the FBI's files on Michael Jackson has since been released to the public. Those documents consist of hundreds of pages. They show that even after working alongside local law enforcement agencies for years, the FBI never found a single piece of evidence proving that Michael Jackson was guilty of the allegations made against him. In 2005, Michael Jackson was found not guilty of all charges. A 10-year FBI investigation into Michael Jackson ultimately revealed nothing, to the point where agents were forced to close the case. In any case, it is important to understand that this story still appears far from over, for 2 main reasons. First, one of the reasons the lawsuits filed by Wade Robson and James Safechuck were dismissed was related to the statute of limitations. At the time, victims of child sexual abuse in California had until their 26th birthday to file a legal complaint. However, the law was later changed, extending that deadline until the age of 40. Because of that change, both lawsuits were reopened in 2020. A few months later, James Safechuck's case was dismissed again. Then, in 2021, a judge also dismissed Wade Robson's case, citing a lack of evidence and declaring the decision final. Even so, the attorney representing both men stated that he would not abandon the case. The second reason this story continues is that the director of Leaving Neverland, Dan Reed, has stated that he is already working on a sequel to the documentary. According to him, the new film will focus on the consequences of the original documentary, including the legal aftermath. He also said that this time he invited attorneys representing Michael Jackson's companies to participate, claiming he wants to present multiple points of view. As stated at the beginning, this video was not made to convince anyone that Michael Jackson was innocent or guilty. The goal was to carefully examine what happened in each case, compare the different versions, and highlight the most relevant facts on both sides of the story. And after reviewing all of this, one thing becomes clear. There is a lack of physical evidence in all of these cases. As a result, the investigations relied heavily on testimony. And as we have seen, these testimonies often contradict each other. This is a delicate matter, as a victim's testimony should always be taken seriously, at least until proven otherwise. If you are watching this video and are experiencing abuse, or know someone who is, it is important to report it. In the United States, you can call 911 free of charge to report cases of abuse. Other reporting options can be found in the video description. In the end, it is extremely difficult to know with certainty whether Michael Jackson was completely innocent, completely guilty, or guilty in some cases, and innocent in others. What is clear is that this story could have unfolded very differently if the media had not acted so irresponsibly from the start. The public often fails to separate speculation from fact. Much of the media spectacle was driven by the pursuit of audience rather than by a commitment to clarify the truth or support potential victims. In the end, everyone involved in this story was harmed, regardless of who was telling the truth. And if Michael Jackson was in fact innocent, one line from the documentary Square One is worth remembering. If Michael had paid the $20 million demanded by Evan Chandler in August, instead of in January of the following year, he could have spent the next 10 years as the most famous artist on the planet, rather than being remembered as the most famous child molester in the world. Thank you for watching. This video took an enormous amount of work, so if you enjoyed it, please leave a like as a sign of support for our work. And subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future uploads. If you'd like to become a member as well, you can click the link in the description to get early access to our videos and see your name in the final credits. Thanks again for your time, for your support, and for watching. Goodbye.